Welcome to the Growth Unbound podcast. I'm your host, Gavin Baker. It's great to have you here. Join me as I sit down with accomplished leaders in the healthcare industry, diving deep into their experiences, challenges, and triumphs when using innovative marketing strategies to drive growth in their organizations. Welcome to Growth Unbound. I'm Gavin, your host, and today I have with us Dr. Bert Solomon of Knoxville Spine Sports.
Yep.
Bert, thanks for being here today.
Man, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
So we're going to get into some great stories about you and your practice and why you built it the way you built it and kind of where you're going. But to start off, who are you and what is Knoxville Spine Sports?
Yeah, so thank you. So Bert Solomon, I have been a chiropractor for 24 years. I have been married for 27 to Tara Beasley Solomon, love of my life. And we have 3 kids, a 20-year-old, 17-year-old, and a 15-year-old, 2 boys and a girl.
Yeah.
And so very family-oriented, and just learned early on in practice that my medical model was not what you would say is the average chiropractic business plan or way of doing business. And I really didn't fit the mold, so I really had to create my own mold, which was a journey in and of itself. And so through that whole process of kind of figuring out where I fit in the world of chiropractic and how I can serve my community through chiropractic care, I started Knoxville Spine Sports. So Knoxville Spine Sports is a multi-disciplinary practice. We have physical therapists and chiropractors both working together. Usually we do not co-treat every patient, but co-treatment does happen in our office, which kind of makes it a little much of a blend between like your traditional chiropractic practice and your traditional physical therapy practice. And we are very like-minded, which really helps, and really believe in the vision of being together is better than being apart. So kind of our slogan is together for health.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
And you said earlier that your model didn't fit. So tell me more about that. Where was the friction? Why didn't it fit?
So early on, I knew that I wanted to surround myself with people who were really good at what maybe I wasn't super good at. And most chiropractic offices that I'd been exposed to were just straight chiropractic offices, one doctor, one support staff. You see patients all day, you do your chiropractic thing, and if they need something else, then you go somewhere else, right? They're there to do a thing, and then when they can't serve you with that specific thing, then it's time for you to go somewhere else. Yeah. And I wanted to have the support of a team. I never wanted to be the sole guy, the standalone guy. Yeah. I always thought that if I could be a part of a team that was better than me at a lot of things, then we could go a lot further and we could accomplish a lot more. Sure. And so I just applied that to my chiropractic practice and just wanted to surround myself with people, again, who saw value in what I did, but also had lots of value that they could add to my patient's experience and then their overall health and wellness, and then also add to my skill sets, right? And so that became the journey and the model. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like it's a very patient, it starts with a patient view in mind, right?
Yeah.
To some degree, better health outcomes.
Yes.
But also, I would assume just convenience of one place, one billing, one location,
that's
everything's simpler, right?
That's a benefit, right. But it certainly was birthed out of doing what's best for the patient. Yeah. I can't remember how many years ago. It was probably 15 years ago. I took a test, personality test, strength finder.
Yeah.
And it was probably the most, it nailed me to a T. I had my wife read the results and she was like, I can't believe they could write all this about you from a test.
That test is incredible.
It is amazing. And so, but through that experience, I learned more about myself, right? You learn what is it about life that brings you alive, that energizes you, what kind of sucks the life out of you, and why it does that, right? So one of my core strengths from that test was being a maximizer. And a maximizer is someone who loves and feels energized behind seeing other people maximize their potential, right?
Yeah.
So whatever it is, I want it to be at its fullest potential. Yeah. If it's a TV, I want it to be the brightest and the most colorful and the most vibrant. If it's my children, I want to see them grow into the greatest person they can be, right? I want to have the best marriage that we can possibly have. And so we work hard at it. But everywhere I looked in my life, I saw this like thread, right? Like whether it's at church and you're wanting to help see other people grow into healthier human beings. And I just saw this thread of like wanting to be used in other people's lives to make them more of who they want to be, to maximize their potential. And I knew that, frankly, I didn't think I could do that on my own. And it would be so much better to achieve that, which would energize me, right? To have a team that could help me do that. And so that's kind of where that vision came from. And so it was more of like, hey, you can help my patient as much, if not more than I can. Let's do that together so that they can express themselves in the best way. And through that, like, I learned so much. I grew more as a therapist by working with others than I ever did in chiropractic school alone. But taking what I knew and then learning from others and then becoming something new was just like exciting and fun. And
so if someone was going to try to do a similar idea, right, taking two different kind of schools of medicine, pulling them together, what's a mistake that you made along your path? You think, hey, here, you want to fast forward, skip this step? Let me tell you about the mistake I made and what I learned from it and how to avoid it.
So several things come to mind. And the first one is early on in practice, you don't start with a group. You don't start with an A team, right? You got to build your A team, right? And it was just me. I was all by myself looking for people to come alongside me with the same vision, right? And so I would call physical therapy offices and ask if I could meet with them to just educate me on what is it that you do and how you might be able to help my patient, because I want to refer my patients to physical therapy when they need it. But I don't want just to refer to anybody. I want to refer to people who are going to be great at getting them where they need to be, right? And not just mediocrity, right? Because, again, maximizer, right?
Meet your standard of care.
Exactly, exactly. And so if I'm going to share my patient with you, you better be really good, because I don't want you to take what I have and tarnish it, right? Which is the patient. Right? And so my love for the patient wanted high standards for them, for me, and so forth. So early on, I would call, and this was like 24 years ago. So, I mean, there was a lot of animosity between chiropractors and physical therapists back then. And we were competing for the same demographics. Chiropractors were not seen as well in the eyes of physical therapists as maybe they are now. And so there was a lot of tension between the two professions, more then than now.
Viewpoints weren't really appreciated, maybe.
Yes, exactly. And everyone thought they were superior than the other. And that's just hard to swallow and hard to get behind and get that behind you. But I looked for a year and a half and just was turned down. No. And I'm like, I'm trying to refer you business. I'm giving you business. Would you just educate me on what it is that you do? And so I didn't get anywhere with that. And it was interesting how it happened. There was, in my office, there was open room adjusting, which means that it's a big open room, multiple tables, and you just treat in this open facility where you can be with two people maybe at the same time, doing some modalities on one while you're adjusting the other. So I was doing that, and the way that it was set up, you could see the front door from where I was. And the door opened, this gentleman, middle-aged man, bent over, can't even look up to see, look at me straight, walks in my office, and so the whole office stops, you're not supposed to be here, because it was by appointment only, right? And so he walks in, he's like, hey, do you think you could help me? And I was like, Honestly, I don't know, but let me finish with my patient that I have.
Yeah.
I'll be happy to see.
Yeah.
He ended up being a physical therapist.
Okay.
And he had heard about me through some of his patients.
Yeah.
And he had a really good, successful practice, but his physical therapists weren't able to address his need. They'd been trying for a couple of weeks, and it just wasn't making the progress that he was looking for.
Yeah.
So I was able to treat him and adjust him on that day.
Yeah.
And he told me thank you and gave me a $20 bill and walked out of my office. I was like, well, that's not how this works. Yeah. But he was like, do you mind if I buy you lunch?
Yeah.
And so we started a conversation over lunch, and just my vision, his vision, and just blending that together. We found very quickly that we were very, very much the same in our mindset. So finding that person, was hard, and it's about building relationships. Right. But beyond that, what else did not go well?
Well, I want to pause you there for a second and say, I want to make sure I heard you said 18 months of essentially cold calling physical therapists and getting zeros. Goose eggs.
Yeah, no.
So where does that tenacity come from? Because that's, most people are not going to go 18. Yeah. 18 months is a really long time of no.
Yeah, it is. It's over a year, man. Yeah. Just think about it. I think the tenacity comes from your vision and your passion, right? Like if there's no other way, it's like if all the other bridges are burned, there's nowhere to go but forward. Yeah. And so it may take 18 months or it may take 2 years, but we don't have another choice. Yeah. This is the road. Yeah.
You believe there was a better path.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's just it makes me think about faith without works is dead, right? Yeah. So like, if you don't believe in the mission enough, you're not going to have feet or action steps to achieve it, right? Yeah. And so at what point do they end when your vision dies, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And so it was more of a necessity to find it than a strategy, right? Yeah, so it was just...
But it was tied to the vision you had. Yeah, exactly. This is a print we have here. It says the market for something to believe in is infinite. And what I like to think of that as is the market for something to believe in is basically possible. Yeah. And when we think about our healthcare clients, it's like you deal in hope, right? Yeah. Everyone walks through the door hoping, believing that you can help tomorrow be better. Yes, right? Exactly. And everyone wants a better tomorrow, right? Exactly. Whether that's physical pain, whether that's mental pain, whether that's just, life in general. But like, that's what your vision ties to that, right? Absolutely. I can help more people if. Yeah, that's right. Or help them better. Or
that's right. Exactly. So and that's the passion. Yeah. It just comes from how can I help this patient reach their hopes and dreams, right? And I think again, how do you do that together? Yeah. You do it better together.
Yeah. And the walls of your office are covered in pictures of people that you have helped.
Absolutely. Our office, we love to celebrate people's successes, right? And just to know that you were a part of that wall, part of that patient's life, right? Yeah. Like I didn't help them do that, but I was on the journey that helped them get there, right? And it's just so empowering for us as employees, as coworkers. Yeah. But hopefully it's also inspiring for patients as well to say, oh my gosh, well, if he can do that for them, maybe he can do that for me. Yeah, yeah. And so those walls are special.
And to be clear, it's not just like professional athletes or college athletes. No. That wall is full of
absolutely, man. Athletes. It's human beings hope with helping them attain their hopes and dreams. Yeah. It could be a hiker that wants to go on the AT trail with an ankle sprain and can't. Yeah. It can be an Olympic athlete that is training in Knoxville and hoping to go to the Olympics in swimming. Yeah. And anyone in between. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is great. Yeah. So what trends are you seeing as you've grown the practice, have you changed it, as you've kind of brought a new method model to it? Yeah. What trends are you seeing in healthcare, but either with your patients or with just how things are working for what you're seeing?
Yeah, it's a changing landscape for sure. I mean, it's changing rapidly. Yeah. Again, just Obamacare comes to mind.
Yeah.
Made some huge changes, some good, maybe some not so good, depending on your viewpoint. But insurance companies, we sign contracts with insurance companies that say we promise to play by your rules, and they hold all the keys. Yeah. And if you want to treat Blue Cross Blue Shield patients, you have to play by Blue Cross Blue Shield rules, and you have to promise to do that. And so they change the rules quite frequently, which means that you have to change the way that you do things to accommodate those rules. Right. And that's a lot of like, there may be a lot hidden in those words. But for instance, Blue Cross Blue Shield could say, hey, Gavin, you get 60 visits a year. Right. But in the fine print, it may read, yeah, you get 60 visits that we approve. Right. And if we don't approve what is going on, then we're not paying for it. Right. And you just hear 60 visits. Sure. And so some of that changes. I think more people are open to more than just Western medicine. And deductibles are going up, out-of-pocket expenses are going up. And so using that insurance isn't as necessary anymore because sometimes it's cheaper just to pay cash. Yeah. And so that's another thing that's changing in medicine. I don't think medicine is changing enough in the ways that we have changed, meaning we are better together. We do talk to each other about the same patients. We meet often to discuss patient care. We are troubleshooting patients. We have other disciplines come into the treatment room for their opinion. Right. It's in real time. Right. So if I want your medical doctor's opinion, but he's not in the room, you got to go see him.
Yeah. How do you get it? Yeah.
Yeah. And then that's going to take time. Sure. You're not the same human being. Right. Your inflammation level may be down. Right. You may be more swollen than you were when I saw you. Right. But if we can do it together at the same time, it's more effective, it's more efficient, and it's just better for patient care.
Yeah. Well, and the business of it too is if you sync with my doctor on this thing. Yeah. How is he or she getting paid for that expertise, knowledge, right? Without seeing me, right? Yeah. And just kind of those mechanisms, right? Which are potentially better for the patient, but maybe not better for the ecosystem per se, right? Because doctors got to get paid, right? Yeah, exactly. So it's a challenge for sure.
It is for sure.
What do you enjoy most about your business? So, and maybe to put a point on it, not a patient experience,
interaction,
but like the overall, leading the business, growing the business. What do you enjoy most about that?
Yeah. Again, it goes back to your personality, and I love creating opportunities for people to grow. Yeah. And so if I can provide that in a very healthy and safe way for coworkers, employees, staff members, that's what brings me alive. And that's why I do it, right? I mean, that's a great reason for me to own the practice, is because I can create as healthy of a place as I can, right? And I care more about that than I do about other aspects of the business, and about developing the human person, the human potential in people, whether that's staff members or patients, it doesn't matter. Sure. So creating that atmosphere and seeing other people catch the vision is fun. Yeah. And our coworkers will say often that there are a lot of intangibles that are more valuable than a paycheck, right? So the community that we create, the help in helping others grow, right? In their skill sets, mentally, physically, spiritually, however. Yeah. So that whole mentoring, developing, kind of shepherding or farming, so to speak, that really excites me. Yeah. And to know that I've been able to create that makes me feel good about what we're doing. Yeah. And want to keep doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a hard tension, right? Because you still have realities of actual
absolutely
patient load and cases
and bills, man.
Yeah.
You got bills to pay.
Yeah.
And so you can't just give everything away.
Right.
And you got to hold a standard, right?
Right.
And that comes with a dollar amount.
Sure.
Right. And, I say often that even churches that pay out more than they take in won't be there long.
Sure.
Right. I mean, so you have to be a good steward of the resources that you have. Yeah. Right. And so one of our core values is viability, right? Economic viability, viability in our treatment model, and just making sure that we're viable.
Right.
Right. And so you have to be thriving. You have to have your head above water to be viable.
Sure.
And that's important.
Yeah. And hard to do when you're on the edge of new things, new methods, new models.
Yep. And it's always a challenge, right? It's never not a challenge. And you just have to get up and meet the challenge day to day.
So going back to something you said earlier, you're talking about kind of the I'm going to call it the elegance of having multiple treatment professionals in one space, right? Different types of doctors, different types of, and I'm drawn to the Olympic logo on your shirt.
Yeah.
And so talk a little bit about those experiences you have with the Olympics, which is probably arguably at least in some ways the pinnacle of sport in the world, right?
Right.
At least aspirationally the pinnacle of sport, best athletes.
Yeah.
But is that model of kind of everyone together replicated there or modeled there, I guess is probably a better question. At the I'm not sure what's the proper name for it in Colorado Springs?
It's the Olympic Training Center.
Okay, Olympic Training Center. So is that model of care that you kind of talked about of everyone being together showcased there?
It is.
Okay. So what's that like?
It is. If you don't mind, I'm going to back up just for a second. So, and take us kind of on a journey of what it could look like and not work well, and what it looks like when it does work well.
Okay.
So probably 14 years ago, I decided to join a bigger multi-discipline practice and give up some of those leadership responsibilities that I had. And so I joined a group called Family Care. And Family Care had several locations, and they had a lot of medical staff. They had nurses, they had dietitians, x-ray techs. They had a small emergency room kind of clinic. They had vein specialists. They had sleep study doctors. Yeah. And then they had physical medicine, which involved physical therapy and chiropractic. And so it was this hodgepodge, this beautiful opportunity for collaboration.
Sure.
Interprofessional education, right?
I mean, that is quite the specialties all under of providers, right?
What a great, it's like a panoply of things to like a smorgasbord, right?
Exactly.
You could, let me learn
Thanksgiving
from
dinner.
Right. Like, let me learn from all these different things. And that medical model really appreciated functioning together but separate.
Sure.
Almost like a glove, right? Mm-hmm. We were one glove, but there was an appendage for physical therapy that didn't communicate with the MDs, who were another appendage that didn't communicate with other doctors.
Dietitians.
Yes, exactly. Right. And so we were together, but we weren't together. Yeah. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So think of a mitt versus a glove, right? That economically is a good model if you care about the economics of things as a business owner. Yeah. However, what I see at the Olympic Training Center is different. Yeah. It's more of that mitten kind of care where everyone is together. Mm-hmm. You treat in the same space. You treat the same patients. Everyone is documenting in the same charts. Yeah. You meet regularly to discuss patient care. Mm-hmm. And so it's more of this, let's work with my skills and you work with your skills. on the same patient. Let's come up with a game plan and let's implement that game plan. Maybe they see the chiropractor twice a week. Maybe they see the physical therapist once a week.
Right.
And maybe as they improve, we swap that.
Right.
Because you don't need me as much.
Right.
And so it was this beautiful progression of just being like-minded in mission.
Yeah.
What's best for the patient? Let's just cut everything out. What's the best for the patient?
Yeah.
And so they treat at a high level.
Right.
They're treating high level athletes, and it's paramount to their performance that they stay at the top of their game.
Right.
And I think the Olympic Training Center or the USOPC Training Center have figured it out.
Yeah.
And so it's a beautiful model.
So when you compare those two things, I was actually at lunch today we were talking about marketing context. We talked about this idea of a house of brands or a branded house, right?
Okay.
And so, and this idea of a house of brands is just a bunch of divisions or products and that's almost how you described it, right?
Correct.
There's a bunch of products and there's maybe commonality in billing or invoicing or or signage or something.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, kind of very autonomous units.
Yes.
And versus a experience that is, hey, this is a kind of linear top to bottom.
Yeah.
And so when you compare those two, what do you think enables one to work really, really well from your perspective, which is the Olympic side of it, versus the other model, which is, to your point, economically maybe amazing, but maybe doesn't have the same level of patient thoroughness because of maybe that. What enables one versus the other? Why do you think they work? One works and one doesn't.
That's a good question. So my first thought is about our practice, right? And so what we care more about is quality and congruency, right? Okay. So when you come to our office, we want you to get the same treatment every time. We want that to not be a cookie cutter experience, but you're getting the same level of care every time you're there. We're at the top of our game every time you're there. You're getting our very best. Yeah.
There's no B team, right?
No. And so that's the congruency side. And then the quality is like being the best at what you can be in your profession, right? And offering that every day to your patients. So there's a lot of quality, a lot of congruency. And then there's a lot of education between the disciplines. Yeah. There's a lot of efficiency in communicating. For instance, one of our physical therapists is a lower quarter biomechanics specialist. From the hips down, man, she is, in every sense of the word, a professional. She's an expert. Yeah. And so if I have a patient that I'm looking at chiropractically, they may walk a little funny. Yeah. I will bring them out into our open treatment area and have them walk and ask Carolina, can I borrow you for 2 minutes? Yeah. Look at this patient and tell me what you see as they walk away from us and as they walk back to us. Yeah. Let's talk about this in real time. Sure. That is so efficient. Yeah. It's so powerful. And it just speeds that whole process up. Sure. For me to write out what I'm seeing, fax it to your doctor, have your doctor schedule an appointment for you to go see him to assess the same thing, and then tell me that is so inefficient. So the efficiency level is really high in our office, which speaks to the quality and the congruency of care. So that's what I think makes it successful. Yeah. I think a house of brands can financially be a good thing. Yeah. But the quality, I think, would be less. Sure. I also have another example. Yeah, sure. So this is a personal example. Yeah. My wife was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis when she was 10 years old, 12-ish. Yeah. So at that age, you're not an adult, so they call it juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, so JRA, right? So I knew that when we got married, when we were dating, and we knew what journey we were signing up for. Mm-hmm. And so we knew the progression of that, and we were going to be with each other through the whole thing. Well, as one would expect, things have degenerated a little bit with her arthritis. It's gotten a little worse. And she's come to the point where she needs a surgery in her neck. And so being in Knoxville, we want to start with Knoxville doctors, right? And so we go to the general practitioner. The general practitioner says, well, that's not my specialty. You need to go see your rheumatologist. So we go see the rheumatologist. They say, well, you need to go see a surgeon. So let me give you to the surgeon. We see the surgeon. The surgeon says, I think you're going to be a great candidate. We call back weeks later, and my wife has a wound on her leg, and we're concerned about it because you can't do a surgery if there's an open wound or an open infection. So we're like, hey, could you help us with some medication to kind of help this wound, so that we aren't postponing this surgery?
Right.
And the answer was, well, we don't treat that. You're going to need to go somewhere else, and go back to your rheumatologist. So we go back to the rheumatologist. The rheumatologist says, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. We don't treat that. We need to go see your primary care doctor. Right. So it's just this very inefficient system of being what I consider like silos, like on a farm, right? Everyone is their own individual silo, but they're not communicating together. And so eventually, long story short, the surgeon decided that this might be a little too complicated, and he wanted a second opinion. So he sent us to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt treats very similar to our office in that everything is in this oneness. We met with the doctor. He immediately sent us 2 doors down to see his rheumatologist. They scheduled something immediately that was done on the same day. So just this efficiency is quite attractive. And it's proficient. I mean, it's great care.
And the maximizer in you loves it. It's all being done. But the patient experience side of me says like, that's so much better.
Absolutely.
Because you're getting answers and to have availability versus come back in 6 weeks or next availability is this time frame or whatever it would be. Right. And there's, we can't change the fact there are not enough doctors. We can't change there are people who need help, but when you can get care,
absolutely.
So it's a horrible, tragedy of specialization essentially.
Correct.
Essentially you're just in some ways a victim of specialization. You're going to see specialists and they're all saying, I'm not a specialist in that thing. So you need to go see somebody else who is maybe less specialized or more specialized in a certain area. Which is amazing when you need a specialist.
Correct.
But when you don't, and that's so hard to navigate as a patient. And so that's what I think is interesting is as in our worldview is we get and understand how patients are viewing the world and thinking. You touched on that a little bit of like, well, if the cash pay price is not really that different than the insurance price, maybe it's even cheaper. There's no benefit. There's no insurance benefit at that point. There's just an insurance thing, right? And there's a choice. And so I was recently at a conference and there was a question about patient centrism or patient-centric choice. And someone said, well, when's someone a patient? And one of the guys in the audience he's at a health system, but he had a very interesting view. And his view was, you're a patient when you don't have choice. You're a consumer when you have choice. And so he's like, for us, you're a consumer, you're maybe a buyer of medical procedure services. Up until the point you have basically been checked in. You have an IV in your arm, and now you're a patient. And then we have types of patients. We have active patients, inactive patients. Like we've got all kinds of patients. But up at that point, you're a consumer. And I think that's kind of what you're speaking to some degree. Is like if you've got choice, you should pick where someone's going to be enable your kind of Vanderbilt experience.
Exactly.
Which is, do you think that is, and you may not know, but do you think as being there, you're kind of the view of a patient? Is that because that is their model? Like, is that how that's their view of medicine?
That is. Okay. It's a teaching facility where they are collaborating with other disciplines where they are not the specialist, right? And so the doctor has to ascertain like, okay, we need a plastic surgeon involved. We need a wound care specialist involved. We need to talk to our rheumatologist. We need to get more bone density scans to see what and so he has a team. and they all work together at Vanderbilt. Yeah. It's a collaboration of care, facilitated through one particular doctor.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So as you have that relatively recent example, you've got the Olympics example.
Yeah.
As you look forward for your business, right? Look forward the next 6, 8, 10, 12, 18 months.
Right.
What learnings do you take from that to apply to growth for you to then kind of boomerang back out? Yeah.
No, that's good. Some of the things that I've learned through working with the USOPC, being with my wife at Vanderbilt, I'm learning and being reaffirmed that what we're doing is a good thing. And we just need to keep doing that. Yeah. So do we need to change? We need to constantly be adapting to and changing to the landscape, without changing the quality and the congruency of our care. Yeah. Right. So some of the challenges that I see moving forward, because we're kind of busting at the seams in our office, is do we create a second location, or do we build a bigger building? You know? And so do we stay together, or do we create two together places, right? Yeah. And so I'm trying to work through that as I look forward to the next 2 to 5 years. Yeah. And then how can we make this not a Bert Solomon clinic, but a clinic with this common vision? And you have to seek those people out that see the vision, catch the vision, want to be a part of the mission. And those personality tests that I talked about earlier really help you see who could potentially be someone who could work in that workspace. Yeah.
So tell me more how we use the personality test. So what do you kind of shared your own personal example. Okay. I'm a maximizer.
Yes.
And I would say you go through that. So you're a maximizer. How do you use it with your team or in hiring?
Yeah.
Or what do you?
So the first thing you got to do is have all your employees take it.
Yeah. Okay. Step one.
So, and I pay for it. Yeah. And what's empowering is how much they learn about themselves through it, which was the same thing that happened to me when I took the test, right? It was so powerful to have read to me or to read, like, this is who I am on this sheet of paper. Right. And some people may freak out about that, but it really helped me understand why certain circumstances drain the life out of me. Right. And certain personalities, to be quite honest. Sure. Right. And then why being around other personalities just bring me energy, right? And are very synergistic, right? And so having this for all of our employees has been really good and empowering for them to learn about themselves, but also for them to see that I am trying to take the care to make this experience at work for them the most effective and efficient and healthy. Yeah. If you don't like to be pushed, then I need to learn how to communicate with you in such a way that you grow at your pace. Yeah. If you thrive with me pushing you, then I need to have the freedom to push you, right? And so until we take those tests, we don't know, right? Or at least I don't know. Yeah. And so 1, take the test. 2, study all of your employees, take notes, and learn what it is that brings that person alive and what it is that drains that person, and try to put them in circumstances for success, right? Yeah. Because when they succeed, we succeed. Yeah,
that's good. That reminds me, have you, something to look into, are you familiar with Patrick Lencioni's Working Geniuses model?
No.
So he has a model, he's got a podcast and a book and all these, and he's the one who wrote 5 Dysfunctions of a Team and wrote The Advantage and some of these other kind of allegory business tales. But he has this thing called Working Geniuses, and he has, I think, 6 types of working genius, and it's similar to like Maximizer, but his are like wonderment, and it's these concepts of, actually reminds me a little bit of the Enneagram, but it's just these ideas that, and they use it as, labels are a funny thing, but he uses it as like self-discovery labels. I know that I'm good at these 2 things. And because I'm good, this is my primary and my secondary, I operate best when I am doing these pieces. And actually as an organization, there are times when I'm in my zone of genius, but it is actually not effective for my organization for me to be doing that.
Correct.
And so he tells a story of someone who's works at an organization that has events. And this guy is we'll say I can't remember. He's full of ideas. He's an ideation engine, right? Yeah. So he's like early on in the event process, this is fantastic. Yeah. 2 weeks before the event starts, he should not be in a meeting because he's still going to be ideating when actually decisions need to be being made about details and not new ideas being added. Well, what if he's like, that's actually, he's like, so I've learned, this guy was telling a story. I've learned I can't come to those meetings. Yeah. Because my zone of genius is actually not helpful. Correct. In those moments, right? Yeah. It's actually a detriment because it just confuses. Right. And does not provide clarity. It's distraction. Yeah. The objectives have already been set and I'm throwing up new goalposts and everyone's like, oh my gosh, that's horrible. And so it reminded me a little more of like a kind of like StrengthsFinder. Yeah. Or Myers-Briggs or any of the tests. Yeah. But what I've personally found them useful for. So for example, I took the Enneagram 3 or 4 years ago. Realized some people love the Enneagram. Yeah. Some people hate the Enneagram. Right. What I found most helpful about it was the same thing that you kind of had in the StrengthsFinder moment. Right. I had my own Enneagram moment, which I was like, oh, I'm a 3. Yeah. So as a 3, one of the primary things I find valuable is setting goals. And it was just like this light bulb moment. I was like, oh,
no wonder.
If I set a goal, I can accomplish the goal. Yeah. And if I don't set a goal, I don't care about it at all. Yeah. And so that means to self-manage, I got to set goals. That's right. And if I set goals, I will accomplish them. Right. But if I don't, I really will not care. And I was telling a story to a friend. I had set a goal to run a certain race and I was running and I ran the race. The race was on a Saturday, ran the race. And I've been training for about 3 months. The next morning, I guess Monday is my next training day. I wake up Monday morning and I'm running down the road. It's like 5:30. It's dark. For the theatrical, it's probably raining. And I stop because I'm like, why am I running? The race is over, right? I accomplished my goal. You did it. And so I was like, because I hadn't set a new goal. So then I set a new goal, right? Yeah. So then I have a reason to be, which is, it sounds really silly, but I literally stopped in the middle of the road. I was like, why am I doing this? Like,
doesn't it take all kinds? Right. Like that's just to the point of like, you are amazing at what you're amazing at. Right. But like, you're not amazing at everything. No. Right. It takes us all working together for a common good. Right. Like you serve such a purpose and having people come around you is a great model. Right. But celebrating like, no, I am a 3. Yeah. I am good at this. Yeah. And to be effective and efficient, I need to set goals.
I need to do these things, right? Yeah. And the other thing about the zone of genius, which is also true of any of these things, right? Enneagram or StrengthsFinder, is Patrick Lugosian says, there are sometimes you have to do things that are not in your zone of genius, right? Yeah. You can't be like, I'm really bad at email because I hate administrative things. So I'm not doing. He's like, no, you still have to do. Yeah. We all have to do things that are required that are not in our zone of genius, but are necessary and needed. Yeah. And so that's true for all of us. Absolutely. So we got. I got us off track here. But as you think about where you're going, 18 months, 20 months, what's a vision that if someone heard this and thought, man, I want to be part of that. What's that vision that is it an Olympic quality facility? Is it? And I just said that out loud. Yeah. I'm not sure what it would be for you, but
so I'm hearing 2 questions out of that. One is what is next for Bert Solomon? Sure. And then what if Bert Solomon could dream? Yeah. What would it look like?
Yeah, sure.
And so the dream would be a multi-discipline clinic that was bigger than mine, that had several other disciplines involved. Yeah. And we treated it with more like Vanderbilt. Okay. Right. So a little bigger, a little more inclusiveness to treatment, a little more specialties involved in the office. And to do that, I would need a bigger space, and we would want to be able to take care of, grandma who is having a hard time going up the stairs, all the way to professional athletes, right? And so we all need to maximize our efforts in what we're doing And we want to be excellent at that.
Right.
And we want that to be in Knoxville.
Sure.
And now if I look to the next 2 to 5 years, the way that's going to happen is to have other people catch that vision.
Yeah.
You know, and finding them is not been easy.
Yeah.
And so we have to work hard at finding them, and we got to be a little lucky. And it's all about the right fit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
are there facilities like that in other places around the country?
There are.
Yeah.
There's one in South Carolina, and I think it's in Greenville, South Carolina, but they're not many.
It's not common.
No, it is not common at all. This is a rare experience. And I want it to be more mainstream. I think it's the future of medicine.
Yeah.
If Vanderbilt is doing it and Johns Hopkins is doing it and the Mayo Clinic is doing it, why aren't we all doing that? And so, again, efficiency, do what's best for the patient, be about excellent, surround yourself with people who are amazing at what you're not amazing at, and do it for the good of others.
Yeah. So what's the limiting factor? If you had to put your finger on one thing to make that happen, what's the limiting factor?
I am a limiting factor.
Sure. Yeah.
And the goal is to replicate not only the idea in others, but replicate these skills in others, right? So it has to be more of a teaching facility as well. There's got to be some kind of educational component to it as well. The other thing is finances, right?
Sure.
You got to be able to pay people who are excellent, and excellent people aren't cheap.
Right.
And so that can be a limiting factor.
Sure.
And the town, right? Can the town support
the market,
the market, what we're trying to accomplish, which is incredibly rare. And other people are trying to do it. I just think they're not quite doing what we're doing.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I asked that, because my thought was probably economics, right?
Yeah.
There's a thinking exercise that we sometimes do to, we get in ruts of thinking of how we want to solve a problem.
Yeah.
And there's one of them that I think often can help. It's called it's called the Midas method, which is if money wasn't an issue,
Correct.
how would you solve the problem?
Yeah.
And then that opens doors. Now money's always a factor, right?
Correct.
But if you got rid of it, you say, well, this is how I do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, money's the factor, but now you've at least got 2 or 3 new pathways that you wouldn't have ever considered before because
you stopped at money.
Because you stopped at money.
Yeah.
And so that's when I think about the difference of you had the glove versus the mitten, of the difference for the Olympic committee sports versus the private practice.
Correct.
Is money's not
an object. Correct.
Right. And it's there.
Yeah.
But it's not there in the same way of.
Correct.
Well, you have to pay this.
Yeah.
Because everyone's getting paid in some capacity.
Correct.
And there's funding that's external to care. Right?
Correct.
Because it's tied to mission.
Correct.
Correct. But money still matters, right?
Yes, it does.
And so how do you?
Yeah.
Which again, we're not going to solve that. As fun as that would be to solve that today.
Yeah.
We're not going to. But it's. But I can't wait to see what you come. Where that goes next 2-3 years.
Me too. And also to speak to what you're talking about, it's a great opportunity for business coaches, right?
Yeah.
For someone like yourself to help me in other medical facilities with these stuck points that we have, whether mental or economical or whatever it is.
Well, I think that's, you talked about how we're just like healthcare is changing, right?
Yeah.
And it's moving fast.
It is.
But there's also that opportunity that comes with that change. And so I think as we do a lot with, patients are now buying medical services, right? So they're shopping, so they're going through, they're acting like consumers.
Yep.
So they're looking at reviews, they're doing all these things that they wouldn't have done 15 years ago.
Correct.
Because they wouldn't have needed to. They would have gone to the doctor. The doctor says, go here, get this test, get this x-ray, get this MRI, whatever.
Yeah.
There's no real cost associated to them.
Right.
So they don't think about it. Now, all those things, they were always costs, but they just never showed back up at the patient.
Yeah.
Now they're showing up at the patient.
Yeah.
And so what that ends up doing though is there's gonna be a model that gets created somewhere.
Yeah.
To your point earlier.
Yeah.
If I had to pay this out of pocket anyway or close, why not? Or maybe it's a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I don't care that maybe it's even 30% more, but I don't care.
Yeah.
Because I value all these other things, right? Which could be they know my name. It could be I don't have to fill out as much paperwork. It could be scheduling's easier. It could be any of those things that then find a model with, okay, great. These people are willing to pay for that. Right.
Yeah. That's right.
And that's okay. Right.
Yes,
that's
okay.
part of it. It's breaking a model.
Yeah.
But potentially that's what you need the model to be broken so that people can recognize it. So, all right, as we close out, I always love to learn about what people are reading or learning from.
Okay.
So podcast, books. Yeah. So what's on your
plate?
Yeah. What are you reading right now?
Yeah.
Why do you like it?
Yeah.
What do you recommend?
What a great question. So currently I just finished a book by Pat Gentempo called Your Stand is Your Brand. I highly recommend it. He was a chiropractor, but he's way more than a chiropractor.
Okay.
He's an entrepreneur and he's a pretty amazing guy. And so again, just self-reflecting, self-growth, really trying to sharpen who is Bert Solomon and where does Bert Solomon need to change?
Yeah.
Right. So that was a great book that I just finished. I'm also reading one currently called 4 Pillars. It's by Stu Weber. STU Weber is Weber. But Stu Weber wrote this book called 4 Pillars of a Man's Heart. And it speaks to men having the attributes of a king, a warrior, a mentor, and a friend, right? And so how are you out of balance in those attributes? And how can you be more imbalanced with expressing yourself as not a tyrant, but a merciful, loving, provisionary king, not like a warrior who smashes everything, but stands in the gap and protects. You know, so it goes through that. So that's a book I'm currently reading that's phenomenal. Also learning how can I take this information and put it into bite-sized pieces for my 20-year-old.
Sure.
You know, like, hey buddy, like this is who we're trying to become. You know? And then I teach Sunday school.
Okay.
So I'm constantly reading commentaries on what we're studying. And so I spend a lot of time during the week doing that as well. So that's currently what's on my plate.
Just a couple of things.
But to your point, it's always good to be doing something like that.
Do you normally have something that's like, as your practice of self-improvement and learning and education, you basically have a self-learning book, the Stu Weber one. You have a business or professional growth book, so personal growth, business growth. Do you always kind of have one of each of those kind of spun up?
I try. I try. It doesn't always work. But that is the goal, right?
Do you find that when you read books together, like, I don't know how you read them, but when you read them kind of back and forth or chapter to chapter, do you find that there's a synergy between what you're reading? Like new ideas come from those? That's
interesting. I used to hate reading multiple books at the same time.
Okay.
I used to hate it. I needed to, and I do this with my food as well.
Okay.
Like I eat one thing at a time.
We're getting deep here, right?
Right. And so I needed to start and finish one thing before I started and finished something else.
Okay.
So to read two really I didn't really appreciate the value of that. I think as I've grown older, I think you get to the point where you just have to, and you kind of get over that. And I think that you're stimulated more in different ways. Right. Yeah. You may not get through the book as quickly as you used to, but you're not just being stimulated in one area of life,
right.
but in all of your dominion, right?
Right.
Like all of the roles and responsibilities
right.
that you have.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there is some synergy there. Yeah.
So the reason it's kind of a leading question, but I've probably my favorite thing over the last, I love reading. So like I love reading, and because I think I just like knowledge and how it applies. And so to that point is I'm normally reading currently something on parenting, something on business, something on leadership, something on oftentimes on history. And it's interesting to see the things that you notice that you wouldn't notice otherwise, right?
If you were just reading that
if you're just reading that one, this is the perspective, right? This is the thing on parenting.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden it's like, this thing on parenting, but actually applies how you talk to your children also applies how you talk to other people. Right. Or how you lead people also applies to how you lead your family. Or how this person, this historical figure, like there's a great book that is called The Commodore, which is the story of Vanderbilt. So, and it talks about where Vanderbilt, the school came from, but it also talks about where Cornelius Vanderbilt basically made his money, how he made his money. And it's fascinating because he was an entrepreneur of entrepreneurs. And it historically ties to how he tried to short, I think silver, crashed the stock market. Oh, wow. Because he had so much money. He could do that. Yeah. But when you go back to the rest of his life, he's a horrible father. Yeah. Just all these things. He won this side, but failed at these other places. Correct. And you can see, and you see those things when you're reading other things of here are people who are doing these other parts of life well. Yeah. And they made a choice, right? And just like we get to make choices, and that's a choice I don't want to make, right? Correct. And so, because we don't want to, win the world, but fail, right? Yeah, right. And so lose everything else. Yeah. So, as we wrap up, is there anything else that you want to add? Any kind of closing comments on things that we should know about you or your life or your practice or your business, where it's going?
Well, let's see. I think a couple of things that just come to mind. One is I heard a guy say once, and this is just to encourage anyone who's listening, that life is like a smiley face, right? And so when you start, you're on one side of the smiley face, and everything's fun and everything's great. And then you get down into like your 20s and your 30s, and you're starting to get into the hard parts of life, and it feels heavy, and it feels frustrating at times, and you don't have any money, and you've got bills but no money. And my father-in-law used to say all the time, when you need money, you have all the time in the world, and when you have money, you don't have any time. And to that a little bit, be encouraged, because you're not alone. Right. That's just part of this life curve of getting to the place where you're in your 40s, 50s, where you've got some money now, you're a little more established, and you are experiencing more of the joys of life again. And then you get into grandparenting and retirement, and then, there's a lot of joy in that, right? And so whether you're starting your journey in life or you're in your 30s and you're kind of at the bottom of that smiley face and things are hard, or whether you're coming out of it, just be encouraged to just keep pressing on, and there's happy times coming.
That's great. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you for being here. This has been great.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me.
No,
it's a joy.
No, well, we'll have you do it again.
That would be fun.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sweet. Nice job.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So if someone wanted to find you online or in general, what would they do? Where can they find you?
Yeah. So Knoxville Spine and Sports with an S.com. And that's our website. You can call us at 865-337-5574. That's our office number. And we're on social media. So we would encourage anyone who has questions or would like to come check us out or has issues related to their physical health. We would love to be able to sit down with them and see if maybe our office is a good fit for them. And if not, where a good office would be. Like sometimes the value is knowing where to send someone.
Yeah.
Right. And so we like to pride ourselves in making sure that we're getting people to the right places. And hopefully maybe that's our office.
Yeah. Awesome. Nice work.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for listening to the Growth Unbound podcast today. Be sure to let us know what you think, and we'll be back soon with more inspiring stories and insights to help you unlock the growth you deserve. I'll see you next time.